and welcome to the Board Game BBQ episode 200. We are a podcast, of course, that was meant to be the Board Game BBQ podcast, isn't it, Dan?
Like a well-oiled machine, Dev.
There you go.
You could have made this about anything. You just started talking about it. So we're going to talk about the economics of investing in, I don't know, someone smarter than me could come up with something.
Stockyards, yeah. As you may have gathered, my name is Dave. I'll be your host today. And that second voice you just heard, that was Conor. How you doing, Conor?
Oh, I'm good, thanks, Dave. Hello, Dan.
Hey, Conor, how are you?
I'm good.
What's been happening, fellas? What have you been up to?
It's been
Dan?
school holidays. So I'm not Dan, I'm Conor, but it's been school holidays, so it's actually the last day of school holidays for me. So I'm happy I'm spending it with you two. I'm happy I'm spending it with you two to do that. And I'm sure Dan's very happy that school holidays is
I have noticed an inordinate amount of photos of the bull every morning. Yeah. I kind of wondered whether you're actually going to work at all. But so school holidays already been back for my boys here in Metro Melbourne. Out in the bull, you might want to check your timetable, mate. Maybe you've been missing some
school's
school
back in Queensland too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so school's back. I said it was the last night, didn't I? Oh my gosh. I've been, wow.
That's okay. That's okay.
I've just erased the last week from my mind. That's what's happened. I'm just going, nah, last week didn't happen.
Black style.
Yeah. Got I don't even know what I'm doing in my life. This is typical of me. Just, what am I doing? What am I even doing? Dan, what have you been up to? Clearly not having the boys at home because they've been at school.
No, what I have been doing besides board gaming, not a lot, and even board gaming, not a great deal. I was saying to Def, some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about tonight, just really quick, quick light games. I haven't had a lot of time to delve into some really deep stuff. I got Unbreakable arrived probably two weeks ago, 2 and a bit weeks ago, and I've seen on Discord a few people have had theirs arrive of late as well. And I set it up and just went, I'm not sure I've got time to dive into it, and that and the 34-page rule book and everything as well. Yeah. So I had it sitting on my table for a while, then I went, I've got things to do. I need to pack it away.
So you hadn't played it before, Dan?
No. So one of the very first Sydney game days, I headed up there, and Brad, Mitch's son, taught me, amongst others, and that's my only exposure to the world of tea until Unbreakable. So look, I opened it up with absolute gusto, and I went through all the components, and geez, the production value is
so good.
No one can touch them in terms of the production value and all the chips. And one thing I do love is I get to do all my little chip tricks from my casino days and spin them and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to gameplay, it's really intimidating. So I may have to reach out to you during the week, Conor, and go, help.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those games where once you almost just play through a scenario and you'd almost just say, I don't even care what the outcome is. I'm going to start it again and play it like myself. So there is, I think at the back of the book and in Unbreakable, it seems to be a lot more significant, like a playthrough of, okay, this is what you're going to do turn one. You're going to be, you're going to be Gale, and Gale's going to take this action and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's what they tend to do. And they play through 2 or 3 turns. And that's super helpful. Like I know they did it with Cloudspire. That's like how I learned it. But I had Mitch teach me, and then I was like, I can't remember what I have to do. And there's a couple little things, but in the end, it's a solo game. If you play it so it's fun yourself. That's the big thing.
Even with all the neoprene mats, because I've got a little setup that I try and do on my desk here where we record, and it's still within a fairly small footprint, which I was really happy with.
Yep.
It is, and the original Too Many Bones is like that, and we were discussing it with other people from our community a few months ago that were late to the party and were learning the game for the first time, and they all said, we were surprised to see how small of a footprint the game takes up on the table, typically for 2 gear locks or 2 players or whatever. And it is, in fact, a game that you quickly set up and you can have in a small area on the table. Yeah. I wish Chip Theory Games didn't call this expansion Unbreakable, because now everybody just calls it Unbreakable, which to me rings all kinds of bells with that old movie that with Bruce Willis and the superheroes and
Mr. Glass.
Mr. Glass.
They call me Mr. Glass.
It's funny you bring up Too Many Bones, because that's going to be part of my oath at the end. I've got a little story to tell as well. So I'll wait. I won't give it away just yet, but yeah, there's a little bit of something coming about Unbreakable. So that's you got to stay till the end. Not that you don't already.
There's some foreshadowing. Story time with Mr. Devise.
So what have you been playing, Dan? Give us a bit of a...
One of the games that I've been playing, we were actually lucky enough to get a preview copy of a game called Aethermon, which is coming out next month on GameFound, I think. I don't think it's Kickstarter. I think it's going to be coming out on GameFound.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a set collection game. The first thing that strikes you about this game is the artwork is stunning. It's really reminiscent of, I want to say like a Studio Ghibli or one of those, Spirit of the Fireflies, or anyway, I'm going to embarrass myself with my lack of knowledge of Studio Ghibli, other than the fact that it exists. But it's a set collection game where the cards are all these little monsters, and it's going to be, obviously there are going to be comparisons drawn to Pokemon, because the little characters, they're based on the elements, and they are creatures like, instead of there's an elephant which is mixed with plants, so it's like an ellie plant, and then there's an ellie leaf that grows into an ellie plant, which then grows into an ellie something else. So it's like an evolution, but it's not, they don't necessarily evolve. They're just part of a set. So if you collect one of them, it's got all different point values. But if you collect an entire set during the game, then you double the points. And you can be played competitively, can be played cooperatively, but you really just, when you play co-op, you're just playing against a score. What you do is you shuffle the cards and you lay them out in an entire grid. And then there's like a little party, a little team of three characters that go around, and you slide them along the grid as far as you can, like a rook in chess.
Yep.
And wherever you land, that's the card you take, and you collect that one. And then the next person actually moves the party along, and then wherever they land, they'll collect it. So you eventually start taking these little creatures off the grid. But the great thing with this is that you have these, I've just forgotten what they were called, but there's
creatures.
Sorry, I'm pausing because I know that thing I will edit it out, but I've just gone blank on what they are. Give me a second.
One of them is called Follow Wolf.
What?
Follow Wolf.
Artifacts, I want to say.
Follow Wolf.
Sorry, Adrian. I'll just give him a timestamp, 9:10 already. So you have these artifacts that you can collect, and you draft them at the start. So I think there's maybe around 16 or 18 of them, and you either draft them openly so everyone knows what everyone's got, or you can draft them secretly, and it might allow you to skip over empty spots. It might actually allow you to move diagonally around the grid. It might allow you to move like a knight in chess, where you can actually move across two and then forwards one. Yeah, so you can manipulate the way that you move. But it's a really simple game. But it's a lot of fun. I've been playing it with the boys. The boys really enjoy it, and they love collecting the different creatures, the different Aethermon, and checking them out.
Gotta match them all.
Gotta match them all. Well, that's what they should say. There's a lot of work has gone into the artwork, and also on the back of each card, and all the cards are square cards as well, so it looks really sweet when you make a grid on the table. But on the back of each card of these Aethermon is a bit of a story and a bit of a bio, if you like, about what they do, what they are. A bit of mythology, and I know that the Aethermon studios who have created this have already got other Aethermon type games in the works. If you go on their website, there's talk of an Aethermon RPG coming up. So all the groundwork they've put into this set collection game, but the mythology behind all these creatures, that's going to evolve into other different types of games, hopefully. So yeah, the boys have been really enjoying it. I'll put some photos of it on our socials as well. But Aethermon Collect is the name of this game. And hopefully they'll run with this Aethermon and have a series of different types of games. And this is just like a gateway into that Aethermon world.
It's interesting. It's interesting because I don't know what newcomer worlds in this space have to do to break into that market that's dominated by a couple of big names like Pokemon and I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever else.
Digimon, I suppose.
And so those have been around for so long, and they're so dominant across multiple industries and mediums and stuff. So be interesting to see what you guys think about, okay, what is needed from a newcomer in this space without obviously having the backing of a Nintendo or a massive organization that creates something. Just somebody coming in with a fresh idea and saying, hey, we have this, is this going
And
to succeed? Does this
think
have
they've-
any chance of succeeding and growing?
And
Or
they've done it really cleverly in the fact that it is such an easy. I wouldn't say it's an easy game to in terms of a gateway game to start playing with, and it really is pitched at sort of families and young kids and stuff. But that's the perfect way to actually then segue into something a bit more deeper, whether it's got more of a narrative like an RPG or whatever, and they want to expand
or a card game.
the age of moment. Exactly. And I buried the lead as well. The most important thing is they're actually Australian designers as well. So
excellent. That's so good.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they were at PAX last year. And like I said, their Game Found is launching next month, I believe. Yeah.
It is an interesting sort of play to, rather than, like you said, Dan, if they're potentially coming out with an RPG or a strategy game or something. I'm obviously going off the cuff here but that they come out with a set collecting game. Is their market directed families, because set collection is such a, like you said, an easy to grasp concept. All right, so I need to get all the leaf characters, I need to get all the fire characters, I need to get all the thunder/electric characters. So they're getting people in, and then I guess the way that it could work is say, oh, I really like this one, I always go for this character, I like the fire characters, and then all of a sudden you get an opportunity to play as that fire character in another game. That could really pay off, I think, because they're obviously hoping that this will then help them springboard. It becomes an IP rather than them going full bore and bringing out like the big game straight away. They can make this other game that might have less overhead. I think it's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, for sure.
That's very good. What about you, Conor? What's been on the table?
So over the holidays, I had my nieces and my mum and my sister come and visit. So that was really good. Usually we get heaps of games played, and this time was no different. I want to talk about a game that I've talked about a couple of times, and it's weirdly, I still don't understand why. I think it's just because so many good games are out at the moment. But this game just always is a hit, and it's always fun to play with my family, and that's Ecos: The First Continent. So, Dan, I think this one should be on your radar, even Dev too, with the girls. So, because so what you do in Ecos, and I've sizzled this game I think twice because I think I've talked about the expansion in the base game, is that you're effectively building the first continent, but you have these cards that you activate by playing elements, but all the elements are used in real time by what's the opposite of asynchronous? Yes, at the same time.
Live?
Yeah, live as all the other players.
Simultaneously?
Simultaneous play. So once they're activated, it becomes a race to say Ecos first, and then you can activate your card. And each card can only activate so many times, depending on how powerful it is. So this is made by John D. Clare, who's made Cubidos, he's made Space Base, a whole heap of stuff.
Board Game BBQ award-winning
Ready, Set, Bet, of course. Best party game of 2022. But yeah, the reason why I like this is because it's almost got something for everyone, right? So it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what type of gamer your families are, you can get something out of it because you pretty much pick and choose how complex you want your cards to be. Now, you might be someone that just wants to put animals on the board. You might be someone that just wants to build up forests and so on and so forth, and you score points, you build combos, and that's really where I think it's great because what I can imagine is what my older niece Audrey started to do is she started to build her own comp based on the cards she had. So she would be like, oh, what do you think? Which card do you think I should take? And then I said, I think you should take this one. She goes, oh yeah, because I'll get to put a tree down, and then in my next turn, or potentially I can activate the leopards, and I can get the leopards to go on the trees, and I get points for every leopard that's in each community. It's got really simple scoring. Yeah, I don't quite know why this isn't a bigger hit, because it's such a great family game that you can really like extend. And I can see people chasing huge scores because it's like, combo, I complete one card. Oh, that lets me complete another card, and lets me complete another card. And now I'm going to move all these antelope And then in my next turn, I'm going to move all these lions, and these lions get to eat these antelope, and I get all these points for eating the antelope. It's really good. It's really, really clever. So Eco's the first continent, and then there's an expansion that brings just a few different animals and a few different lands. So you can have Mount Kilimanjaro, the Sahara, like all these unique land masses that either give you an ongoing bonus or give you a end-game scoring or something like that. Yeah, if you're looking for just a different but easy to play family game where you can have it at a lower level and then moderate and then advanced, I really suggest giving Ecos a go. I imagine it's available pretty much anywhere because it's relatively new. But so it's Ecos, the first continent.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm not familiar with it at all.
I'm surprised Dan hasn't played this. Yeah.
No.
Interesting.
Hasn't been on my radar.
Yeah, no, I think you'd really like it. And the boys would like it too.
Connor. It's been a long time since I've actually got the purchase pen out.
Oh, yes, I've written it down. The pen there.
There you go.
It's like a new purchase pen smell. It's
yeah, it's been a while.
Def, what about you, my man? What have you been playing lately?
I was fortunate enough to meet a member of our community that has been with us almost since the beginning. I would say you guys might remember a bit better than me. So Thomas from Germany is in Australia.
Yeah. Who's he? Why haven't I heard of him before?
He's in Australia with his family, and he's been in Brisbane for a few days. So we all met at Adrian's place on Saturday and played a few games. A couple of other people from our community were there as well. Jimani was there, Matt was there, Adnan was there, and we broke up in a couple of tables and played a couple of games. We played Union Stockyards together. That was the first time I played that game. That was everybody's first time. Matt Woods taught us, and we went through that game. It's been an interesting one because we've been talking about this with other people, and Harry wanted to buy it, and I wanted to back it. And I remember back then in the campaign, something stopped me. Something didn't feel right with the gameplay. I got the same feeling yesterday playing the game. I thought it was good fun. It's about meat packing companies that slaughter pigs or sheep or cattle, and then they improve their reputation in each one of these niche markets. And every time you do one of that, then you gain the difference, the profit margin between your price or your value of that specific type of meat and its current price in the market. And so you can invest in marketing and things like that to improve your reputation for cattle. So if you then slaughter a cattle, then your profit margin will be better than the other players. Stuff like that. There is a little map involved where people start buying land to build buildings on, and that can lead to some very interesting competitive situations on the board. Overall, the game was pretty quick, even though it was 4 out of 5 players our first game. It only took an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes.
That's good.
Yeah.
So it was very quick. It was very tight. You never have enough money to do what you want kind of thing, which is usually a good thing in these games.
That's the way of life.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well because with 5 players, everybody gets only 3 workers, while with less players, you get a lot more workers. But one of the things that happens in the game is sometimes there's an event drawn at the start of each round. There's 6 rounds in the game, and the unions strike. So if the unions strike, everybody loses 1 worker for the round.
And everyone else is scab, scab, scab.
So it was a very tight game. The scores were much lower than what Matt told us they got in a 3 or a 4 player game. Overall, I thought it was good. The theme comes through quite nicely, but I wasn't completely sold on the idea of this market manipulation that it has. I think it tried to do something similar to Clans of Caledonia, but the concept there is a lot simpler. If you buy cheese, then that means demand is up, price goes up. If you sell cheese, then price goes down because there's more cheese in the market.
It's better to purchase.
In this game, imagine you have one track for, say, pigs, right? And there's a black marker that says radio. The current price of pigs is $7. And so everybody starts on their own value for pigs at $9 or something like that, or $8, which means if you go and slaughter a pig, you'll gain $1 profit. But then somebody else might go to do some marketing and increase their valuable or their value, the perceived value in the market for pigs by $2. That means that player will then be able to slaughter a pig and gain $3 profit. But what happens though is and this is fine in principle, like the idea I thought was brilliant, but what happens at the end of each round is the market that has the cattle, the pigs, and the sheep, the type of meat that has the least amount of meeples on the board left obviously is more in demand, and so it increases its price by 3. So even if you've improved your reputation, you're now suddenly not making enough money. And the type of meat that has the most of has the least demand, so it drops its price by 2. So you can manipulate the price of the different types of meat, not necessarily because it benefits you or because you want to slaughter an animal to make a profit, but because it might help you overall in the market situation, which I think as an idea is great. But the problem I found was that it impacts all players the same. So if the price goes up or down, it impacts everybody. If Dan is making $3 profit, Conor is making 0, and I'm making 1, and the price goes down to, everybody's making an extra $2 profit.
Yeah.
So
the high tide lifts all boats.
That's right. I thought during the game that this became less and less interesting, this part of the game, which I thought going into the game and looking and playing the first round or so, that this was going to be the heart of the game. The rest of it is a relatively straightforward worker placement game. You take some spots and you build land, or you buy land and then you build buildings on it. But game aside, it was fantastic to meet Thomas and his family in person and play a couple of games with him. We also played John Company, which was quite an interesting game. That was Adrian's first game as well, by the way, so I'm expecting him to talk about it next time he's on the podcast, I hope.
Please tell me he tanked it. Like he caused the company to shut down. I'm hoping that's what happened.
That was me, actually. So, yeah, I wasn't as invested in the company as everybody else, and Adnan was winning by a lot. So my only hope was to tank the company. And I somehow convinced Adnan and someone else to give me their support to become chairman. And as soon as I became chairman, I didn't take any debt. Didn't take any money. The company went under on the same rounds. I still didn't win, but it was a better outcome for me than something else. I thought Adrian liked it, but
liquidation sale.
Yeah, overall, it was just fantastic to meet somebody that is in our community for so long and comes from so far away, and spending the next few weeks in Australia holidaying with his family. We had a great time, and it was just awesome to play games together.
Yeah, so I think Thomas had been in Sydney too and caught up with a few of our community members. So
yes,
I believe Harry might have put something up on our Discord about them playing some games somewhere, and Mitch tried to be funny but wasn't funny. So that's just part of the course, really, isn't it? And then, yeah, so that was great. We just needed to convince him to come down to Victoria. But then I looked outside and it was like sideways rain. I'm pretty sure there's ice on the road. I was like, nah, no, I like
I don't even want to be here at the moment. No.
We'll go for a holiday up north. But yeah, no, good to see him in the great southern land. And hopefully we can see some more of our community from overseas come and visit. That would be awesome.
All we have to do is just move Essen to Australia. That's it. That's all we got to do.
It's already called Essen. I'm trying to do it in an Aussie accent, but it sounds like Aussie. Oh, I love it. That's great.
That's great. So that sounds like quite a few games, even little ones and big ones there, hitting the tables. What about some sizzles? What's been the main feature of your past few game days?
I'll go first. I wanted to sizzle something that I was reminded of a few weeks ago when Adrian sizzled Santorini.
Oh.
So I have, and I kickstarted it a long time ago, but I kickstarted Ragnarocks, which was the somewhat sequel to Santorini. It's done by Grey Fox Games. And it is, instead of Santorini, which is Greek gods, Ragnarocks is, as you would probably assume, it's Norse gods. And it is another asymmetric style game where you're playing on a plateau. How physically you actually, the Santorini game board sits on an island, and you play with this is the same thing. It sits on an island, and the island doubles as a trade. You keep all the components in, and you play battling Norse gods, if you like. And I've been playing this with Jack because Jack's been on a real chess kick at the moment, so I decided to introduce it to him.
That's fantastic.
I've got someone to play it with, and he picked it up like that. He picked it up so quick, which was really great.
What a little legend.
Which is good for Jack, but I think it's also a testament to the game, because it's one of those asymmetric games where it is simple to learn, simple to play, but then you bring out all these Norse gods with all their asymmetric powers, and it is just chef's kiss the way that you mess with each other. But the basics of Ragnarok is it is set on an island, and the island it's quite the grid is quite a peculiar shape, but it's made up of all these hexagons, and you start with two. I'm just going blank. If you start with these gods and at opposing sides of three opposing sides of the island. Mm-hmm. And they can move. You can move them in any of the 6 directions, but obviously your back's against one, so you've only got 3 or 4 directions to go to in the start. But you can go as far as you can, and then when you decide to stop, you cast a
spell.
You cast a rune out of the ground next to you, and then push that in a particular direction. So if as long as you've got a free space next to you, you can cast a rune. The rune starts next to you, and then you're pushing that rune out as far as you can. And what the runes do, and they're great, they're little blue crystally things that sit on the board. But what you're doing is you're trying to use these runes to start sectioning off all these different territories on the board. And the gods themselves are nomadic gods. As long as they can move, as long as they've got free reign, they're nomadic, and they can cast additional runes and start building up almost like a mountain range of runes of crystals. But once they're in a complete enclosed territory, then they're no longer nomadic. They're settled. You can't move them anymore, but you score 1 point for every part of territory that you've now sectioned off for yourself. Cool. So what you're trying to do within quite a small footprint, really, is you're trying to cast these runes and then section off as big a piece of the island for yourself as you can and as smaller piece of the island as you can for the other person. And it's got... It reminds me a little bit of if you ever played where you're moving their pawns, but also building bricks and placing walls in front of them, so they got to move to the side. You put another one in front of them. It has that sort of element where you're trying to trap them in the smallest spaces, trap your opponent in the smallest space as possible, and then they'll just move one, and then they'll cast one over to you, so you got to move, try and block them again, then they'll move slightly, and then so you're trying to completely trap them in this enclosed space. As long as if you're in an enclosed space with another person, then you can keep going until you completely section them off in their own space. Or, which I was able to do with Jack once, I was able to trap two of his in the one space. So then he couldn't move either of them.
Yeah.
And now he's down to one. Now he's down to one god, and I had free reign for the other 3.
This is the same thing like Santorini Den, right? It's a 2-player game.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. There is a way to play 3. It even comes with a solo sheet. The solo, I haven't tried it, but I've looked at it, and it's like a flow chart of and it involves a dice, and I'm just like, I think it plays fine, just 2 players. I don't think it needed to have an attempt at a solo game.
Yeah.
I won't knock it too much because I haven't tried it, but I did look at the flow chart and just went, I think I'm going to bother. As with Santorini, the god powers are really where it comes into its element. And the artwork is slightly different. The artwork is kind of like all the different gods.
They're almost like the pop vinyls. Like they've got really big...
they're massive heads.
So that you can really tell who the gods are based on their face.
Exactly. And it's all, it's Fenrir and Freyr and Tyr and Loki and all the Norse gods, many of them that I didn't know as well. In the pack. And it has a great thing when you select 2 gods at the start. So you go through the deck and you pick which 2 gods you want to use in this game, but then the other person actually chooses which one they play. So it's like I cut, you choose.
Yeah.
And there are some gods that don't work with each other, and there's little icons at the bottom that let you know that. But there's powers like if you can manage to, I've got a few in front of me. So Balder, if you can get all of your Vikings in the one region, then you'll double the score.
Yep.
There's another one where you score any region that you've actually cordoned off, but there is no one in it, That's called a wild region, and it doesn't actually score. But there is a god that if you create wild regions, that they'll actually count towards your score at the end as well. So that's not bad. Another one is that your opponent can't create any new regions unless there is no other choice. So they actually can't create any new regions. If you're selected Viking, you can trade places with an adjacent Viking. So you can swap places with your foe if you like. It's just really clever, and that's where this game gets its longevity outside of just the base game, which is a lot of fun. And there's some push and pull, and there's offense and defense, and then they start casting some runes around you. I've got to get out of here because suddenly I've got runes next to me. I can't cast that way. So I got to move into a position where I can suddenly cast. And I don't want to cast too close to me. I want to cast as far away over the other side of the island as I can to try and maximize the territory near me, minimize the territory near your opponents. It's a lot of fun. If you enjoy Santorini, you'll enjoy Ragnarocks as well.
Do you think this is a step up, Dan, from Santorini? So people that have played Santorini with their children, would they enjoy taking that on, or is that for kids that are a little bit more used to playing board games? How old is Jack?
Jack's 8.
For our listeners.
Yeah, Jack's 8. To be honest, I think it's on par. Given the choice, I would probably play Santorini only because I've played a lot more for a lot longer, and so I quite like it. And it's the verticality of it.
Yes.
So it's almost like there's a 3D challenge to try and wrap your head around, whereas this is just on a flat playing surface, and you're just casting runes to block each other off. So where the game steps up a notch is with the god powers. So it takes almost a basic game and then starts to add wrinkles with, you can do this, but I can't. But I can do this and you can't. And you've really got to sort of keep in mind what your opponent's abilities are when you start playing, because if you changes from game to game, suddenly you got to sort of rewire the way you played the last game, because that's not going to work against this god, and your strategy is going to change with the god you've got. But on you strip away all the gods from both games, I think Santorini is probably a cleverer game, but this isn't without its challenges as well. Yeah, it's still a lot of fun.
So is it more like a 1v1 or battling game, it sounds like, because you need to know what your opponent's doing, compared to Santorini, which was more about, oh, hey, look, I'll try and work out my strategy the best, and if my strategy is better than yours, then...
because Santorini's not... This is basically an area control, and I'm creating the area. I'm blocking you, so my area is bigger than yours. Santorini, depending on how you play, can be an area control style game. You can, if you're lucky enough, you can build like 2-story buildings to trap someone from being able to climb up onto the first story. And if you can section one of their workers off, or 2 of their workers into one side of the island, then you can build. But essentially, you're just trying to get to the top, aren't you? You're trying to climb to the top. Whereas this is really just area control. But again, the board, because with the hexagon shapes, the board is a lot bigger. Santorini is only a 5x5 or a 6x6 or something. Yeah. So you've got a lot more room to move. But yeah, we've been having a lot of fun with this game.
Awesome.
That is great. So that was Ragnarocks.
Heck yeah.
What about you, Conor?
I was lucky enough to get a copy for the podcast of a game I had been recommended. I've lost count the number of times it's been recommended to me, and that is Unmatched, Battle of Legends. So Unmatched is a series of games that you have. It's a 1v1, 1v1v1, or a 2v2 battling system where you are playing Legends. So it's made by Restoration Games, and it's like their evergreen title. So it's just, they keep releasing pack after pack of people. So at one point it was like Robin Hood, Bigfoot.
How much content is there for this game? I feel like every time I see a box somewhere, it's a different box.
Yeah. And that's like the model that they're going for. Is it doesn't matter what you enjoy, you can have these people fighting one another. There's the genie from the Genie and the Lamp. Aladdin might be a character as well. Not Disney's Aladdin, obviously, like the one that's in public domain. So they use a lot of public domain like things. So Harry Houdini was one of them. Course. I think they had a horror one, so like the Invisible Man. But I guess they're one that's probably the big money maker at the moment is the Marvel ones. And the one I got to play was Teen Spirit, obviously inspired by the great Nirvana song. Smells like Teen Spirit. But Teen Spirit, some of the teenage heroes from the Marvel universe. And it's not the ones that you would normally sort of think, except for probably Miss Marvel. So Miss Marvel's probably the most popular one. And she has these flexible powers that can either be ranged or one or two spots away. I'll get into the way the game works in a moment. There's Squirrel Girl who has these companions, these little squirrels that natter around and bug everyone else. And then it came with Cloak and Dagger, who I played as. So Audrey played as Ms. Marvel. And what you do is, so you pick a character, and like a lot of these games that have the battling mechanics or the deck mechanics, you pick a character and it's all there within straight away. You just take the deck and you play with that deck of cards, because your deck of cards is effectively the moves that you're going to take. So it's 1v1. Whoever eliminates the opponent's characters first wins, effectively. It's a 1v1 battler. But the addictive part, I'd imagine, and the fun part is seeing the different characters play off against each other. So while we had a Marvel set, if we had the Jurassic Park set, we could have had the T-Rex versus Miss Marvel, or we could have had...
That's insane.
We could have had Bruce Lee versus Squirrel Girl. Like, it doesn't matter. And similar to how... What I really liked about Super Fantasy Brawl is that the simplicity of the characters meant that everything was balanced. Unmatched has that same feel, because what you're doing in your turn is you're taking two actions, so that the 2 of 3 actions, and you can take both of them twice of the same one if you want. So there's Maneuver, which is where you move and draw a card. There's Scheme, and I'll explain Scheme in a moment. And then there's Attack. So depending on how you've moved your character, depending on the powers that your character has, you might need to maneuver twice because you want to get some space, because you know that the opponent might move less than you. Or you might want more cards to take more actions. There's Attack, which is attack. And what you do is the cards have a base attack. And when you're playing an attack card, the opponent can then play a defense card at the same time. And quite often these cards will have effects. Now, one of the things, like one of the bones people had with this game is each character has what's called a feint card. Not feint as in you've fallen down, as in you've given the old rope-a-dope and hit them with a feint. And what that does is that gets rid of all the abilities on a card. But every character has these, and you know that they have them. So it's not a matter of, I'm playing as Bruce Lee, only Bruce Lee can feint. All the characters have these feint cards. They can be like, I'm going to play it. It's still, the damage is blocked, but your special effect doesn't work as well. So that's how it works. So we played as Miss Marvel, and I played as Cloak and Dagger. So Cloak and Dagger was cool because I had 2 characters on the map, and I could choose which one I moved. So, for example, if I wanted to take 2 maneuver actions, I could maneuver Cloak one space and Dagger another. They had similar movement. In terms of the spaces they could move. But the cards I drew, some of the cards could be played for one character, some of the cards could be played for another character, or some could be played for both. So depending on the cards I had in my hand, I might want to activate Dagger or I might want to activate Cloak. And each of them, when they attacked, would have a different ability. So it was really cool to see how that would work, whereas my niece played as Miss Marvel, so she knew all her cards were then going to be for Miss Marvel.
Is the map the same, independent of the characters?
Yes, it is. So you can get different maps. And the other cool part of this game, thanks for bringing that up, Def, because I might have skipped over it, is the game has these 2... Each section is in whether it's adjacent to another space or it's in the same zone. So when you scheme, so scheme is another option that you can take, and that's another card that you can play. So you've got attack cards, defense cards, wild cards, and then scheme cards, which then give you a buff. And those buffs tend to be anyone in that zone might take particular damage, or they might have an extra attack or something like that. So they're not like an attacking card, they're more of like a power up or something like that. But that might depend on your zone. So the cool part part about when Audrey was playing as Miss Marvel is her cards would have different buffs depending on if she was in the same zone as someone else or not. So, and if you're not familiar with Miss Marvel, she's got these sort of elasticity powers. So that was to mimic her sort of being a whole spot away and sending her stretchy arm and then whack and then hitting them. Or if she shared a zone with someone else, it might be good because then she could shrink down and it made her more evasive. So the characters are really thematic, and I can only imagine that all the rest are too. I've seen a few of them played at the game days. I know someone, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, they had quite a few and they would bring them. But yeah, this is really cool. And we've got so many great games that are these 1v1 battlers, whether it's Super Fantasy Brawl. Another game that sort of it reminded me of because of the positioning was Mythic Mischief, which came out last year. So that's a 1v1 scoring. It's a bit different because you're not fighting. Even you talking about Ragnarocks, Dan, I was like, it's a similar vibe, right? Because you've got a limited maneuverability. You've got to decide whether you move or attack. And then once you throw in, do I have multiple characters? Do I have one character? Do I want to move that one? So, do I, and then like Cloak and Dagger had this thing where you could swap them. So it was like Cloak would be here, Dagger would be here. Dagger might be on 2 health. You'd swap them, and then you could give the health to the other character. So
that's cool.
The complexity of each of the characters just depends on who you're playing as well. So look, I'm probably in a space where I can't afford another collecting game like this, right? Like I've already got Arkham, I've got Marvel, I've got too many bones.
That's enough already.
All these things, I've got Warhammer. Like, I cannot have another one. But if someone was to say to me, hey, you're up for a quick game of Unmatched, undoubtedly I would say yes, because
that is awesome.
it is really fun. I was just happy to get my hands on some. And also, like I said, the fact that you can chop and change who fights each other, and it's almost like it adds
without
to
having someone that's just OP as well.
Yes, that's right. And look, I'm sure there's someone that's going to be stronger.
Sure.
Again, this is the type of game I reckon you would say. So if we play Dan, for example, your character's strategy might be super obvious from the beginning, right? So we'd play like one game against each other. You would probably win like you would normally. And then I'm like, okay, I get that. I'm going to play again, but I know my character now that the layers have come away, and I can see how, while my strategy might be a bit more complex, it might be a bit more rewarding. But it's by no means like super combo tactical, like I win, because you can only play 2 cards in a turn and move.
Depends on what you draw as well.
That's right.
Have your deck as well. Yeah. So I've only played this once. I played, and it was Robin Hood versus Bruce Lee.
Yep.
Which in itself is an amazing matchup. But the thing with Robin Hood was his attacks were all ranged, and Bruce Lee had the 1-inch punch and all those sort of things that were really up close. And so it felt a bit disjointed with the range attacks. But as soon as Bruce Lee gets up close, he just crushes because it's Bruce Lee. And so it was really interesting. It was a really interesting battle because the map itself and where you can move to, it's quite limited. It's not like it's a massive map. So it's not long before you're getting close, and it's a real sort of cat and mouse game outside of the attacking and defending and the feinting and all that as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
How long are the games of Unmatched? We're talking 30-minute games?
Yeah, like I can imagine if we were learning as we went. But yeah, I would say 30 minutes max, unless you're playing 2 characters that are going to evade a lot. But yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. So that was Unmatched Teen Spirit, right?
That's the one.
All right. I might go next. And oddly enough, I also have a quick game to discuss today compared to my usual heavy, long, and...
What are you trying to say?
Who are you?
Unbearable.
What have you done to death?
I'm worried, Dan. I'm really worried.
So this is a game that arrived from a Kickstarter campaign just a few days ago, right after I arrived back from my trip to Greece. This is Race to the Raft. It is the next game by Frank West, so the creator of Isle of Cats. Isle of Cats is a game that it is very beloved in our community and in our podcast, but I'm pretty sure it's done extremely well around the world. It's a very good game, polyomino game that plays well with seasoned players, with experienced players, with families, children. It has a family mode. So when I saw the campaign on Kickstarter, I had a quick look at the game, and Quick light games are not usually my thing, although I do have a lot of them in my collection because I do occasionally like to play them, but it's not something I will go out of my way to get. But because of the way Frank's been running his campaigns, are the only ones so far, and I have a detailed list, that arrive not on time, that arrive before the time that he sets for fulfillment.
How do they do that? Like,
he runs the campaigns so efficiently and so professionally. He shared some financials actually on how much money he has made all these years, how much money spent on marketing, how much money spent on production. He shared some tips on how to run an effective campaign. I reckon he could probably make some decent money, this guy, from just helping other publishers that are using crowdfunding as their main source of funding for their games on how to set expectations with customers and how to run their campaigns effectively, etc. It's been fantastic. And the game was cheap enough. And even though, like I said, I don't usually go out of my way to back these kinds of things, they had a very quick 5-minute demo online. They built one of their little scenarios in the browser mode. So I went and I said, okay, let's have a look. And I was immediately hooked. I liked the puzzle so much that I immediately backed it. And I've been playing it with Dimi the past couple of days. And the game is a winner in my books. I actually think I like it more than Isle of Cats.
Wow.
How the game works is, if you remember in Isle of Cats, you try to lure these cats into the baskets and grab them before the evil comes in the island. So you're trying to take them on your boats and sail away to safety. Race to the Raft is now we haven't been able to save all the cats. Some are still on the island, and the island is on fire. And so you're trying to get the cats to the raft. And the game is very simple, but I have to admire Frank's ingenuity here, because with a very simple concept, he's created an unlimited amount of puzzles.
Yeah, cool.
And I think this game will sit with us for a long time. So what happens is, you have 4 big square boards that are divided in, I want to say, 12 by 12 grid. And each grid is a different color. And if you remember Isle of Cats, you have red cats, you have yellow, blue, purple, green. You have 5 or 6 different colors. And the grids are one of these colors. And they're all scrambled up, right? They're all mixed up. And then you have some smaller tiles that have maybe half of those grids. And each scenario tells you, hey, you're going to set them up like this. And then you have some cards that are fire cards that show where on the island is already on fire. So you place them on different parts of the map, and usually they're adjacent to each other. And then you have some cards that have the cats. And you place them on the island based on the scenario instructions. And you say, oh, there's a yellow cat over there. There's a purple cat here on the other corner, etc. And down here on the right-hand side is the card with the raft. And your objective is to get all the cats to the raft before the fire gets them. And the game is very simple. There's 4 decks of cards, and on the back of each one of these decks, you have almost like a breakdown of how much probability there is for each color to be there. So you have one of the backs is like there's a lot of blue, there's a lot of yellow, and there's a little bit of red, and much less purple. Cool. So that means that this is roughly what you expect to get in this deck. So at the start of each round, each player draws 3 cards, and then you can do only 2 things. You can either place a card anywhere on the map, you can overlap other grids, you can overlap cards that you've played before, but you cannot overlap fire. And then you have to draw a fire tile from this big bag that is full of cardboard fire tiles, and they're all sorts of different shapes. And you have to place them on the island adjacent to one of the existing fire grids. And so what happens is every time you place a card, the fire expands. The second action you can do is you discard one of your cards to move a cat, but the cats can only move across the path of their own color. So you're trying to create a path of the color of the cat that you want to move. But every time you play a card to extend their path, the fire closes in. And it sounds extremely simple, but what happens is Frank's created this campaign book that walks you through the very simple rules, and then you play a couple of tutorials and then you jump into it, and it has this increasing difficulty of scenarios because sometimes you have, more cats, or the cats have to go to a specific spot on the raft, so they have to go on this side, not anywhere. And sometimes there's more fire tiles and stuff like that. And it plays very quick. Like our games have been between 20 and 30 minutes. You can play it solo. You can play it with up to 4 players, I think. And yeah, there's 80 scenarios included in just the base game. There's more online that they're being published, I think. And all you need for this scenario is just the layout of the map and where everything is. That's all you need. And it's just been really good fun. This spatial type of puzzle is definitely my kind of thing. And the way you're trying to cooperate with the other player, because the rules specifically call out that once you start placing cards, there's no communication between players. So you don't know what the other player is holding exactly. And there's no turn order. You can decide to play all your 3 cards, or the team can decide, you know what, Def will play 1, then this person will play 2. So you can decide to play the cards however you like, but there's no communication after you select the cards that you're going after you start playing the cards. Having said that, there is something called the communication token that each player gets 1 or something like that, depending on the number of players. If you spend that, and that's only once per game, you can talk to someone. But hang on, there's more. Wait, there's more.
Thanks, Dan.
There's also the meow token. And the meow token, if you spend it, you can say meow. But that's all you're allowed to say. The other player can start talking, and you can meow, but that's all you can do. So we had this situation where Dimi was trying to play something, and I knew it was going to mess with our plans because the cards that I had in my hand were not going to help. And I started meowing like crazy. It was this bizarre situation where the girls came down from the second floor going, who is meowing and what's going on here? What is this?
Dad can't say anything.
Asking you, do you want me to put this here or not? And you're going, meow.
Yes, exactly.
1 meow for yes.
You can use, obviously, these rules if you want or not. I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. It will make create a huge amount of fun with younger players, for sure. I guess the point here is that the amount of plays that you can get and the puzzle you can get out of this very simple concept is great. And I think this is going to get quite a lot of plays in the months and years to come. And I'm really curious to see what the reception will be from the community. I know Isle of Cats has been a favorite for many people, and I get it. It's a very solid game. I think this is, for me, the spatial puzzle here, and it creates a little bit of tension, a little bit of stress. The fire is chasing you. You're placing the card, but is there enough room to place a fire tile? Have we cleared enough space? Has any of the cats moved forward enough so that the path behind can burn while we're working on saving the cats? Race to the Raft has been very good so far, and I'm expecting we will play more and more of the puzzles moving forward. They get more difficult as you go, as you'd expect. So I'm really looking forward to that.
So it's not designed as an expansion or an extension of Isle of Cats. It really is its own game. Because I've never played Isle of Cats before. I've seen it played. I remember Mike teaching it at one of our game days, and I sat in as he was setting it up, and it looked really cool. And I came back like an hour and a half later, and I still going. That guy. Then I came back another half an hour later, and I was still going. And I'm like, this is not at all what I was expecting. I thought it was like a cute Uno style game, correct. And so knowing that it took them so long to play it, I've just avoided it.
Yeah, it's a completely separate game. It's just set in the same universe. So if you played Isle of Cats, you understand the backstory of it. But Isle of Cats is a bigger game. It's meant to be a bigger game. There's more stuff involved. In the standard rule set, there's a bit of complexity with card play. There's end game stuff that happen. There's mid game abilities that you get. There's all sorts of different things. In the family mode, the game is much simpler because you don't have the baskets and the fish to attract the cats, but it's still a long game. Long as in, it's not a 30-minute game. It still takes probably an hour and a half with 4 players. Race to the Raft is a quick puzzle that would take you between 20 and 30 minutes to play per.
I can just imagine the fights that my family would have with this game. It's like, all right, we're going to play the communication token. All right, first of all, you guys are all a bunch of effing idiots. Why are we doing this? Like, it just end up going, we should be doing this. Oh, it would be great. When you explained the rules, Def, I was like, oh, I wonder if you'll be able to do that. And then as it kept going, I was like, this is like the type of game that I was hoping it would be. It really does sound like an absolute hoop, but super stressful as well. Have you worked out some sort of meowing system with Jimmy yet?
I was going to ask as well. The meowing thing reminded me of for some reason, it reminded me of the you use in Magic Maze when you're not allowed to talk and you're trying to tell someone. I can imagine the amount of passive aggressive meowing that is going on when people.
We were playing herd mentality when the girls were down, and when someone takes too long, you moo. So it's like someone would be like, take like 5 seconds, moo. It's like, oh, come on, guys, give me a chance. But yeah, I this passed me by, actually, to be honest with you, Jeff, because I was really a bit like Dan. I thought, like Isle of Cats, I haven't played it, but I haven't been yearning to play it. And then I had no idea. I think when you said, oh, it's here, I was like, what is this game? I've never heard of this before. So yeah, this is on my radar now because I think this sounds like really good. How long does it play in?
Like I said, between 20 and 30 minutes is all you need. And I do expect the puzzles will get a lot more difficult. So I would expect
a puzzle as well
to settle at 30 minutes, but our first games have been 15, 20 minutes, only part of the rules and very basic puzzles, easy to solve, but fantastic tutorials to get kids into it. I would expect this would be very popular with families as well, because it's also a cooperative game. And in typical fashion, the designer says, so you can discuss it before you pick cards, but after you select the first card to play, there's no communication. And obviously, otherwise, you have a lot more chances to figure out the puzzle. So
I'm going to have to buy this just so I can get some peace and quiet from my boys for half an hour.
So that is Race to the Raft, and it's a game from Frank West, and I think his company is called the City of Games. Pretty sure it's the City of Games. So that was it. What about you, Dan?
I've sizzled Ragnarocks. That was going to be my sizzle for this week. But I want to just give a quick mention, another really quick game that I've been playing a heap of on Board Game Arena, and it's a fun game to say. It's a fun game to say as well because it's boop. It's boop, but you can't say boop. You have to say it's in the rules. Boop. And what it is, it's another cat game. But the game takes place on the top of a bed on a quilt. And the quilt just happens to be a 6x6 grid, and you have 8 little cats. And you take turns in placing these cats on this grid. And when you place a cat on the grid, any other cats that are around it, either adjacent to it or vertical or diagonally, they retreat one space. So if you were to place a cat right in the center, the next person would typically place a cat next to yours, and your cat will just move across one. And as the game plays, you're shoving these cats, you're booping them off the bed. And then they go back to that person's collection to play again. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get I said cats, I meant kittens. You're trying to get 3 kittens in a row. Yeah. Once you get 3 kittens in a row, those kittens come off the board, and now you get 3 cats. They get replaced by 3 cats in your hand.
Right, okay.
And you win the game by getting 3 cats in a row.
Okay, right.
So you start with 8 kittens. As soon as you get 3 kittens in a row, you replace those kittens in your hand with 3 cats. Now you've got cats to play. So you want to try and get a couple of cats in a row. If you happen to get 2 cats and a kitten, they'll come off and the kitten will get swapped for a cat. So you can slowly build up your collection of cats in your hand.
Yes, yep.
And you win by eventually getting 3 cats in a row. The thing with the cats is a kitten won't actually move a cat. So you do have a bit of an advantage once you start getting cats. So you're trying to find these really strategic plays where you can try and get some kittens in a row, but knowing that the other person's going to place a kitten and they're going to shove your kittens and boop them off the bed. It plays really quick. It's a lot of fun. And the other way you can win the game if you have all of your cats and kittens, all 8, on the actual board. You've got them on the bed without being knocked off. But Yeah,
or if you head boop a real kitten, you also win.
Yeah, no fires. You're not trying to bed on fire and get them to the raft.
Someone having a dart in bed, are they? Oh, there's a fire in the bed.
cross pollination. But yeah, this is another really quick game. It plays really fast on
Fantastic.
The box. I've seen the physical box, and it does look like it's on a bed. There might be a deluxe version out there because I've seen photos of an actual quilty sort of pillow type thing that you can play them on. But yeah, that was another game that I wanted to quickly mention tonight because I've been playing that a little bit as well, and I think I might actually probably add that to my asymmetric of my collection of board games one day because I've been playing a lot of fun, and again, it's very chessy, so I think the boards will probably like it as they go up, and that's boop.
Very good. That's a Sizzling Games for today. That's great.
If you're looking for a new board game, you need to check out adventgames.com.au. They have a great range of games, including pre-orders and hot new games. Anything you could be looking for will be there at Advent. Dean provides excellent customer service that is second to none, and he's always keen to support the Australian board game community through events, game days, and even through sponsoring a podcast. So head over to adventgames.com.au today. That's adventgames.com.au.
Now, a little bit of announcements and news before we move on to our question of the pod. On the 28th of July at 8:30, we've got our Patreon pub quiz. So if you are a Patreon or if you would like to become one, then don't miss that evening. It always is a great deal of fun and chaos, especially when Conor is there and messes up his maths. We always enjoy that.
That was not fair. I still at the Jackbox. Yeah, that wasn't fun.
So that's on the 28th of July.
And Chris, one of our Patreons, he's actually hosting that Patreon pub quiz as well. He's put a lot of work into it. So bring your A game, bring your thinking caps, and bring along a beverage of choice as well. And have
pot
some
or
fun.
a pint. Love it.
Very good. So the question of the pod, the previous episode, which I was also on, was what game has been the biggest with your family? And Conor, you and I did a Patreon episode recently where we spoke about gaming with our families a lot. I spoke about it a little bit on the public podcast in the previous episode. Would you guys like to read out some of the answers we got in the community? We got a truckload of answers across the social media. Dan, would you like to start with our Facebook responses?
Yeah, some of the ones that caught my eye on Facebook. Andrew said Everdell. He said it's one of the few games that his non-gamer wife will play and also a game with his daughter, and he really enjoys. Kenny said The Hunger, a fantastic deck builder with reversed general deck building logic. And what he means by that is you want more cards to score points, but also not because they clog your deck. A great theme and great art. Ron said Quacks of Quedlinburg, although Broom Service wins hands down on Halloween.
No, of course.
It obviously must be a tradition for his family, which is great to have family traditions when you're playing board games as well. Marco says Space Base and Love Letter, the Batman edition. That might be a bit of a humble brag that he's got the Batman edition. He says when there's enough time, we're all working through the Role Player Adventure campaign as well, breaking it up into smaller sessions. And Dana said Herd Mentality. Who doesn't love a game with a pink foam cow named Bradley?
Bradley.
Didn't know the cow had a name.
I didn't either. And my nieces call it the pig. And I was like, it's clearly a cow, but it's pink. Anyway, from Discord, we've got Damo said the biggest hit with the family is still 6 Nimped. Always a laugh. Yeah, that's a fantastic game. Jonathan says The Crew, and recently it's been Scouts. A little bit of ladder climbing trick taking there. Jean says for Liliana, Dog Park by a mile. For Elise, anything Harry Potter, code names Hogwarts Battle. So some good ones in there. Jay says Pillars of the Earth is a perennial family favourite around here.
Wow.
But I would have been Jay's family, but I'd also give a nod to My City, which was the gentle rubber banding that happens due to the differences in what you get if you win or lose each game. Did a great job of leveling the playing field with people and keeping them engaged until the very end. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else had that with a legacy game. Oh, there's a bit of rubber banding. I can't think off the top of my head. And Lauren had said, my family really enjoys Wits and Wages. Yeah, Wits and Wages is cool, right? Because it's trivia you can win without knowing stuff. You bet on what you think is
who you think does know the answer.
Yeah, so I love that because
and so many of those questions, there's no way anyone could really know it. So
it's great. Fox has one like that, doesn't it, Dan? Where someone puts up an answer and you go, "Oh, yeah, I think it's closer to that," or whatever.
Yeah,
something like that.
All right, that is great. That's some of the answers we got. Thank you very much to everybody in the community that engaged with this question and engaged every week with the questions of the pod.
Me?
What about this week? I reckon, based on the discussions we've had and based on the fact that this is the first episode in 251 episodes that I brought a light game into the discussion.
It's groundbreaking.
How about we go with something like, what's your favorite third?
And it has to be exactly 30 minutes. No, I'm kidding. It does have to be 30 minutes.
Maybe 30 minutes,
or less.
What is your favorite game that plays in 30 minutes or less? What do you guys reckon? What are some of your favorites or the games that you think are going to come up?
So many.
Speed, most.
Yeah.
What about a speed game with a machine?
Speed game, yes.
But to be honest, I'm guilty of playing a lot of super fast games on BGA just to kill time. Games like Six Nimmt, of course I've gone blank now. Can't Stop is a really quick one. Boop, I've been playing a lot of Boop lately. There's some really good ones. Turing Machine is even on Board Game Arena at the moment as well. Turing Machine.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you said chewing machine. And I was like, wow.
That's my nickname.
Yeah, I love it. I love a quick game. But even closer to home, one of the first games I ever played and still gets to the table is Love Letter.
Yep.
Those hands play really fast. A round can be anywhere from 1 minute to 10 minutes. And then you go again, and you can knock the whole game over in half an hour easy. So, great ones there.
Couple of ones.
There's some great choices right there.
I think looking at my list, mine is probably an easy pick because it's the game among these that I see I've played the most, and it doesn't surprise me. It's the game I've played with my youngest daughter the most, and that's Patchwork.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
So I think that would definitely be in there. Don't see a lot of short games in my list. Seven Wonders Duel, but that tends to go for a little bit longer. King Domino, maybe with 2 players. The Crew is always great fun. Lost Cities. I love Lost Cities. So there's a few games. But yeah, it's not about what we say. It's about what you, the community, have to say about it. So
what band I say?
No, we don't. Nobody cares.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
What games do you play, Conor?
All games that are longer
Spirit
than
Island
half an
600.
Yeah. Too Many Bones, 4 gear locks, 1 person.
4 gear.
No, I would probably say my favorite game to play under half hour is probably Point Salad. Just so easy, like different every time. You can play with heaps of people and it doesn't really change the timing. Gunshot Clever is great for under half an hour as well. Like just maths homework, if you like doing maths homework in your free time. Yeah, probably. And Archaeology is another great one for under half an hour. Like, again, different each time. You can play different depending on who you play with. They're different strategies. So, yeah, looking forward to what the community has to say.
Yeah, I always get good suggestions from the community, and as they come up on Facebook and Discord, I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I'll write that one down. I'll write that one down too. Next thing I've got a big list in my phone of games.
So join us in our social media, Facebook and Discord, and let us know. We will post the question there. What is your favorite game that plays in 30 minutes or less? That is the question of the pod this week. Now, before we continue, just want to make a bit of a thank you note. Give a thank you note to our Patreon supporters. Thank you very much for supporting the show. Help us keep going, and you don't have to support the show through Patreon if you don't want to. There's other ways to keep us going and help us get a bit of motivation up. You could give us some reviews, either on Apple Podcasts. A star rating and a review helps, or in Spotify's new star rating system. We will get Dan to read them all. So if you do it, then do it in a creative way or even in a different language. See if Dan will be able to read it. There's also our Discord and Facebook communities. Please keep the conversation going, and you can always find us on Discord playing games. We're always happy to play games together. Thank you very much to the entire community. And let's do a quick Patreon shout out. Dan?
Yeah, Anna Ruthkowska.
Yeah, that's very good.
Thanks for being a Patreon. Luella Moore, thanks for being a Patreon. Manny M. and Steve Miller, thanks to you both for being Patreons as well. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you very much, guys. And now on to swearing and oath. Mr. Divine.
Oh, what's your question? Jeff?
What
How to
was your
solve for X?
oath?
My oath was
Solve
actually
for X.
my oath was actually to play Unmatched. So I did a little bit of a cheeky one there. But so I ticked that one off and did that as my sizzle.
What is the new oath, though?
My new
oath is what I'm interested in.
Okay, so my new oath. Dan mentioned Too Many Bones at the top of the show. So I very eagerly, just like Dan would have, jumped into my box of Unbreakable. Started looking at the new gear locks, started tearing up all the shrink, and don't have to pop out any components, do you? Because it's all funky chips and all that type of stuff. So it's really good. I set it up. It's all set up, ready to go. I've picked Gasket. I've picked Gale, who's one of the new gearlocks from the box, and I've picked Carcass, who is like the
you're playing three-handed.
The chef.
The chef, yeah.
Oh, yes.
So,
we love the chef.
And yes, I am a glutton for punishment. I do play three-handed because I just feel like you get the most balance from doing that. Sometimes too.
Easiest way to get a 30-minute game.
Yeah. Yeah. So the story that goes along with this is thank God that these components are nigh on indestructible because I've set it up. Now, I've talked about my dog Ernie on the podcast a couple of times.
No.
I've talked about, and in our own general one, I've shown pictures of him, and he's very adorable. He's great. He's like my best little mate. Anyway, he's fantastic.
Is that why you haven't played? Because you've been waiting 6 days for him to poop out a gear lock?
Nearly. That's what I thought was going to happen. So he's normally really good, right? Except for this time, I left some wafer biscuits on the bench, and he obviously got a whiff of them. So he can't get up on the bench by itself, but what he worked out is he could go onto the table where the game was set up and then springboard onto the bench so he could get the wafer crackers. I come in and there's just too many bones in too many places, right? Everywhere. And I'm going, oh my God. I was like, where is it? And I was going and picked it up, except I cannot find one of the dice for Gasket. I'm like, where's it gone? Where's it gone? I'm like, oh, am I really going to have to be that person? I was like, and I was away, like a couple of searches away, maybe a trip outside to check his unmentioned for this dice. Do I just send Chip Theory Games an email, be like, look, something happened, like a dice didn't come. I wasn't going to say that. They would probably laugh. Anyway, I was like, right, before I do that, I'd go one last little look. On the other side of the room where my board game table is, underneath the curtain, sat this one little dice. So he must have jumped on it. It's acted like a catapult and flung the dice over the dice trays. And that's where that last one ended. So I wanted to play this all week. I didn't get to until today when I found the last dice. So after that long, don't let your pets play the board games, guys, long story, I swear the next time I'm on the podcast, I will have played some of Too Many Bones Unbreakable. I think I've got Rock and Roll as the two tyrants. So I think that's like the first one. And it's been a while since I played it too, Dan. So even I was like, initiative low, high? What's good? I can't remember. So yeah, you're not the only ones. But yeah, a good ending to a nearly somber story.
I reckon, though, it would have been awesome if Ernest had actually eaten that, and then you'd send an email to Chip Theory. I reckon they would publish that and say, hey, this is how much dedication our fan base has. This person in Australia.
The only better thing is if he'd have eaten some of Carcass's dice, because he is the chef. He makes the food, so it's not he's in the dice.
He comes with them.
Yeah, that's right. And they're legitimate recipes, and you can use, trying to think something from their universe, but pork and turkey and beef is an okay substitute. Yeah.
Excellent. Dan, what was your oath?
My oath was to introduce my boys to Hero. And A, I achieved my oath. I fulfilled my oath. But B, it was everything I wanted it to be. It was so good. So the first quest in the quest book is called The Trial, and it's to introduce you to just the mechanics of moving and fighting. And of course, all the boys wanted to do was just to fight. But this was my first experience in ever actually donning the DM shoes. And so it was good for me to cut my teeth as well. I was learning, and I made one mistake in terms of the rules. I let them open a door. When you open a door in Heroes Quest, you immediately get everything becomes visible inside the room. And so you stock up, okay, there's a bookcase here, and there's an orc there, and a goblin there, and another orc there. And then they ask, can I close the door? And I'm like, yeah, sure, close the door. In Heroes Quest, you're not to close the door.
I don't like it in there.
Exactly. They went, well, we're not going in there. Because all they wanted to do was just explore. So they opened a few doors and went, nah, not going in there. And they shut the door. But then they ended up running out of closed doors in this, because there's heaps of open doors that come with the game, but not enough closed doors. So I made that mistake. But the other thing is, it was a learning experience for me and also for them as well, because as they were fighting and they were successfully fighting, they're going, oh, and then I cut his head off and blowing everyone. I'm like, hang on. I'm the DM. I'll tell the story, but they're getting so caught up in it all.
So excited!
I gave them a bit of.
That's fantastic.
A bit of rope to go. Okay, Ian, and because they wanted to get a bit excited. But we played again. We played again this morning. We played a second one. The first time we played it was with Jen and the two boys. This morning we played it just the two boys. They've been asking me all week, but it's usually after dinner. And I was like, I know these quests take about an hour and a half, 2 hours to play, so we don't have time. Let's wait till the weekend. So this morning we played another one, and this morning actually had a couple of traps and secret passages, and they loved that. They walked into a room, and the room was empty, and Jack just looks at me. And he's like, oh, what? I said, the room is empty. And he's like, I want to search for traps. And I was like, you suspiciously eye the roof and the floor, and you notice something a bit odd, one of the stones against the wall, and so you push it and click. A secret door opens, and Oliver's like, oh my God, it's a secret door. And it just had some of those little moments that it was great. It was everything I wanted it to be. And I made sure I was rolling the defense dice for the monsters behind the DM screen, so they didn't know whether it was a success or a fail until I told the story. So I learned a little bit as well, and really enjoyed it. So we're gonna push on with that, because as soon as we finished that one, it was time for lunch. And they can we do one more? So no, we'll do it. We'll do maybe one every weekend, and we'll eventually work our way through them, because they got some gold at the end. They wanted to spend the gold and buying some equipment. So Oliver got a shield, so he rolls an extra dice for defense. Jack got something that he rolls an extra dice for attack. So they were right into it. Loved it. So
that's fantastic. That's
a big hit. Yeah. And my next oath is I'm going to suck it up, and I'm going to learn Unbreakable.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I had it all out during the week. When it arrived, I was opening up, checking everything. I love the neoprene, all the chips and things. And I started reading the rules, and I started watching one of Paul Grogan's. And then I sat down. I just went, I don't know if I've got this in me. So I'm going to suck it up. And Dan Harris, I'm going to play Unbreakable by the time I'm on the podcast next, which is supposed to be next weekend. So that gives me 7 days. But I think
we'll egg each other on.
Plenty of time for a 30-minute game.
I think I'm on again with Condogs. We'll have something to talk about next week.
Right. Yep.
Assuming we both fulfill our oath.
It's going to be a pretty lame oath segment.
My oath, which I remind everyone, I just swore this oath 7 days ago, right?
And?
In the previous episode, and that oath was to play Mr. President.
Are you going to blame your dog as well?
No, hang on. I don't have a dog. Okay. I would love to have a dog, but I don't. Now, this beast is the biggest, most overwhelming thing I've seen. And I've seen a few, especially the last few months. Aeon Trespass Odyssey comes to mind. This is more overwhelming than that. It is a massive game. I don't know who thought this was a good idea, but it is absolutely fascinating. So I set it up and I started playing. And in a usual GMT fashion, the game kind of doesn't teach you anything at the start. It starts the game and it teaches you the rules as you play. And that's probably the only way this game would be possible to teach anyway. And so I have played some of Mr. President. I've played half a turn. Now, half a turn means I'm 3.5 hours in.
It's longer than most games.
So the game lasts 4 turns, 4 years of the presidency, and the first turn, it's meant to last about 12 hours. A full game, so call it 3 hours a turn or something like that. I've spent that time and I'm only halfway there, but I'm also learning the game. So I reckon that's about right once you know what you're doing. But the game is just fascinating. There's so much going on. I think it's actually easier being the bloody president of the United States than playing this game. I'm looking forward to exploring it more. However, I will say that I think even though this has been created as a solo-only game, I think this would be an absolutely fantastic experience to share with a friend of yours, and you sit down together and you try and make the decisions together and see how the impact is and discuss it and all that sort of stuff. I don't know how I'm going to go in such a complicated and overwhelming game with so many possibilities just on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I will keep playing, but I have tried it now, so we will consider my oath fulfilled.
Will we?
Come on.
I will accept this only if you start doing, like, we play this by committee. So in our group, like, all right, guys, what do we think of this decision? And we all have to vote. It's and all 8 of us have to. So it has to be a majority.
We could place the vote to the community and see what they.
Oh, good. It's like
I will put it on the Discord channel. Is Def allowed to say he fulfilled his oath?
Are you going to finish the game though?
That is a very good question, Dan. I want to finish the game. However, I've accepted the reality now that at some point I have to take this game off the table to play something else.
Too many bones.
But this game takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to set up. There is a trillion things that on the board. It takes up my entire table. So I'm not a huge fan of
GMT. You've done it again.
That's it. So we'll see how we go. My intention is to finish the game. So that was Mr. President. Now, in terms of a new oath, I just got the latest game that I had ordered months ago, and I only got it a couple of days ago, and I am super hyped about this game. It is from a very traditional publisher, and it's Horseless Carriage from Splotter.
Yep.
So I am super pumped to play this. I know Adrian has played it and said he was very excited by it. He was very happy with it. The only drawback to this is it doesn't play with 2, so I will try to find a group in the next few days and play Horseless Carriage, the new Splotter game, and report back when that happens.
Cool.
So there you have it. Those are our oaths, and that will bring us to the end of episode 51. How about that? Thank you again to Advent Games and our wonderful Patreons. Thank you to all of our listeners and our entire community. And thank you to you, Dan and Conor, for a wonderful discussion today.
Thanks, you both.
It was a pleasure.
Listening to my drivel.
Catch you all next time.
See you guys.
Bye.
Should we go?
I came up, and Jen goes, "Do you know any Greek?" I said, "I only know Greek from like the school ground," which I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but I don't know.
No, that's perfect.
It's
Greeks would get
stuck in here.
It says I only know food. That's it.
Yeah.
Even the food's probably the Aussie version of the food anyway. Gyro.
Right. That's it. No such thing.